I was diagnosed with lupus after 4 years of being told I was just dramatic. For 4 years, every ache, every skin outbreak, every unexplained fever was reduced to a single word that stuck to my chest like a thorn. Dramatic. That's what they called me. That's how they judged me. I was the young woman who complained about everything, the one who always had an excuse to skip a gathering, the one who cried silently in the bathroom while her whole body ached as if her bones were being ripped out from the inside. I was 23 when it all began. I remember waking up one morning barely able to hold my coffee mug. My knuckles were swollen, as if I had spent the night punching a wall. I went to the doctor that same day. He looked at me, young, female, slim, with dark circles under my eyes. "Haven't been sleeping well?" he asked. "Could be stress, anxiety." He prescribed ibuprofen and a week of rest. I didn't get better. Weeks turned into months. I started having unexplained nightly fevers. My joints hurt so much I couldn't even close my fists. My skin broke out in rashes from the sun. I felt like I was going crazy because no one around me seemed to take what I was feeling seriously. "You're always exaggerating. You've always been so sensitive. It's probably just emotional." My mother was the first not to believe me. We lived together back then. She raised me alone, a strong, blunt woman who learned to survive without complaining. I understand now, but at the time, it hurt like 1,000 needles. "It's nothing, probably psychological," she'd say while serving me soup. "You need to keep busy and stop overthinking." I lost jobs. The first one was at a clothing store where they fired me for having a bad attitude. The manager called me into her office and, without hesitation, said, "You always come in looking like you're going to a funeral. This is a happy place." I didn't mention that morning I could barely get out of bed. I just nodded and left. My friends started to drift away. At first, it was understandable. I canceled plans, complained a lot, became unpredictable. But then I noticed the change in their faces when I talked about my pain. As if they didn't know what to say anymore. As if my symptoms were an inconvenience. One of them, Valentina, once told me, "I think you need a therapist, not a doctor." That was the last time I confided in her. I saw over 10 doctors. Public clinics, health centers, private offices. They did blood tests, x-rays, examined me with that cold, distant, routine stare. One doctor even asked if I was just seeking attention. Some people somaticize a lot. We should consider the emotional side. They prescribed vitamins, antidepressants, gave me lectures about stress management. Meanwhile, I grew more exhausted. I slept 12 hours and still felt like I'd been run over. One night, while showering, I noticed something odd in my reflection. My face was swollen. It wasn't normal. And across the bridge of my nose, just beneath my eyes, there was a reddish butterfly-shaped rash. It didn't itch. It didn't hurt. But it was there. It was as if my body was screaming what no one wanted to hear. The next day, I went to the ER. The attending doctor, a young woman fresh out of medical school, looked at me differently. She listened. She held my hand when I told her I no longer trusted anyone. She ordered a full panel of tests. She promised not to make assumptions without data. A week later, they called me. I had to come in person. That day, my mom came with me, maybe out of habit, maybe out of guilt. We didn't speak on the way there. The doctor welcomed us into her office. She asked me to sit. She held the papers in her hand. She said, "It's lupus. Systemic lupus erythematosus." I didn't know how to feel. It was like a wave of relief, and rage crashed over me. I cried. Not because I was scared, but because someone finally named what had been destroying me from the inside. My mom said nothing for several seconds. Then, softly, she asked, "Can it be cured?" The doctor shook her head. She explained there's no cure, only treatments to manage it. That I had to take care of myself. That my body was attacking itself. That I had to start a different life. We left the hospital in silence. My mom hugged me. It was an awkward, stiff hug. As if she didn't know how to say sorry. But she didn't. Not that night. Not in the ones that followed. She just started coming to my appointments, cooking healthier meals, reminding me to take my medication. But never, ever did she say, "I'm sorry for not believing you." I didn't need her to say it. Not anymore. Because that dramatic label had been tattooed on me by so many others, and I knew no diagnosis would erase it. Things didn't get better after the diagnosis. Life with lupus is like living with a ticking time bomb inside you. There are good days, yes, but there are days when I can barely move. I became someone else. I lost more friends because I could no longer pretend to be okay. I lost independence. Sometimes I can't even carry groceries without my arms trembling. But the worst part is how people look at me. Even now, when I say I have lupus, some think I'm exaggerating. But you look fine, they say. They don't know there are days I put on makeup just so no one asks if I'm dying. That there are moments when the pain runs so deep I want to peel my own skin off. And then came the last thing I expected. A phone call. It was Valentina, the friend who suggested I see a therapist. I didn't know how she got my new number. She said she wanted to see me, that she had found out. I hesitated, but I agreed. It was one of the strangest decisions I've ever made. But now I understand. We met at a cafe. When she arrived, she hugged me. Her voice was trembling. She said, "I failed you. I should have never left you alone." She told me about her younger sister, diagnosed with lupus 6 months ago. She asked for help, advice, anything. And there, in the middle of that broken but sincere conversation, I realized something. Sometimes pain doesn't bring people together, but it can teach. It can turn us into someone else. Tougher, wiser, more aware. That night, when I got home, I looked in the mirror. I no longer saw the dramatic young woman. I saw someone who had survived indifference, misunderstanding, nameless pain. But there was still a long road ahead. Too long. And I didn't yet know that the real hell was about to begin. Hell started slowly, disguised as routine. With the diagnosis came new medications: immunosuppressants, corticosteroids, antimalarials. A bag of pills that felt more like punishment than relief. The first weeks were a mix of hope and fear. I thought that finally, at least, I had some guidance, some direction. But I soon understood lupus isn't a straight line. It's a roller coaster with no brakes. 3 weeks into treatment, I began to notice side effects. My face swelled. My arms grew fine, dark hair. I felt bloated, foreign in my own body. One morning, looking in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. My eyes were sunken, my face rounded, as if it had been replaced. "Did you gain weight?" My Aunt Lucretia blurted out at a family lunch. Everyone sat around the table, laughing, chatting. I could barely cut a piece of meat with my trembling hands. "You must be eating better now, right?" No one bothered to correct her. My mom looked at me silently, lowered her gaze, and kept serving rice. I just nodded, too drained to explain that the swelling was from prednisone, that I was eating less than ever. The side effects were just the beginning. The worst came with the return of symptoms. One afternoon, walking to the supermarket, my legs gave out, literally. I collapsed on the sidewalk. People walked past me. A woman looked at me, hesitated, and kept walking. Only one young man approached. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping me sit on a planter. I thanked him, my voice trembling. I called my mom. She arrived by taxi, worried but silent. As always, the doctor later called it a severe flare-up. I needed to rest, avoid the sun, stop all physical exertion. But how do you rest in a house where you're reminded daily that you're useless? When I was your age, I was already raising 2 kids. My mom would say while sweeping, "You can't even wash a dish." She didn't say it with hate, but with exhaustion. The weariness of someone who believes suffering is natural but complaining is a luxury. The days turned gray. I didn't go out. I didn't speak to anyone. I slept by day, cried by night. I was terrified of falling asleep and not waking up, literally. Because lupus can attack any organ at any time. My heart already raced abnormally, my blood pressure dropped so low I got dizzy just by sitting. Yet no one seemed alarmed. I tried working from home. I landed a temporary freelance writing job. I started enthusiastically, writing from bed with swollen feet and aching fingers. I lasted 2 weeks. One afternoon, my boss emailed me. "We need more speed. Maybe this isn't the best time for you. We understand." They didn't let me explain that some mornings I couldn't even open the laptop from the pain in my hands. They paid me half. Never replied to my messages again. Loneliness became another disease. I scrolled through social media just to see what I was missing. Valentina posted photos with her sister in treatment, but surrounded by friends, support groups, genuine smiles. I didn't have that. I tried. I went to a lupus support meeting, but I felt out of place. Most were older. Others came with family. I was alone. Alone in a cold room, surrounded by people who understood lupus, but didn't know what it meant to have no one. Then suddenly my mom said she was leaving. I got a job offer in Madrid. "It's just for a few months." She left 500 euros on the table, a bag of rice and lentils, and a note. "I'll call you tonight." It was the first time I'd been alone in the house since getting sick. I sat on the couch and cried for hours, like a child. like a broken adult. No one teaches you how to be sick alone. The following days were a mix of terror and rage. Terror that something would happen and no one would find me. Rage because she knew. She knew what leaving me meant. And she did it anyway. One night, I had a fever. 39.8 degrees Celsius. I called an ambulance. They took me to the ER. I lay on a stretcher for 5 hours waiting to be seen. When they finally attended me, the doctor said, "It's probably viral. Have you been stressed lately?" They gave me acetaminophen and sent me home. The next day, I couldn't move my legs from the pain. I started keeping a journal. I wrote down everything: what I ate, how much I slept, how much it hurt. It kept me sane. I also wrote letters I never sent. To my mom. To Valentina. To myself. One day I wrote, "I'm alive, but I don't feel like I'm living." I underlined it, repeated it 10 times, then crossed it out. One ordinary afternoon, there was a knock on the door. It was Valentina. I wasn't expecting her. She looked disheveled, face sweaty. "I'm sorry to show up like this." I didn't know who else to turn to. Her sister was hospitalized. An aggressive flare-up. She had seized. She asked me to come with her. Not to the clinic. To pray. "You know what she's going through," she said. "I just want to talk to someone who understands." We sat in the neighborhood park.
She cried.
I listened. And for the first time, someone voiced what I had felt for years. "I don't know if I'm losing her or if I lost her a long time ago." That phrase hit me hard. Because I had lost myself too. I wasn't the same anymore. Not just physically. I had no dreams. Made no plans. I merely survived. Each day was a transaction. Eat, sleep, take pills, cry, pretend I was better. The next day, Valentina came back. This time with a folder. She wanted to start a support group for young people with chronic illnesses. She needed help writing content, objectives, emails, posts. I hesitated. A lot. But I said yes. It was the first decision I made for myself in months. And then, something unexpected happened. By talking about others' illnesses, I began to understand mine better. I listened to stories, wrote biographies, edited words about resilience. I realized I could have a voice too. That I didn't have to stay silent. That it wasn't my fault. The first meeting was small. 5 people. 3 with lupus, 1 with sclerosis, another with fibromyalgia. All young. All with similar stories. All carrying the same wound. Abandonment. We laughed. We cried. We shared awkward silences. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel strange. I felt like I belonged. But lupus doesn't forgive happy moments. Just when I found some peace, the worst flare hit. The one that pushed me to the edge. The one that made me beg, again, for a different life. The worst flare started on an ordinary morning. The kind of morning where even the sun seems irrelevant. I woke up with my eyes sealed shut, inflamed, like they'd been filled with fire overnight. I couldn't open them completely. I tried to sit up, but every joint felt like rusted iron. I screamed in pain, alone in the room, my mouth dry, my heart racing. I tried crawling to the bathroom, gripping the walls, but collapsed before reaching the door. The cold floor embraced my back as breathing became a monumental effort. I couldn't lift my arms. Couldn't scream again. Only cry. I lay there for hours. I'm not sure how long. Time becomes meaningless when trapped in your own body. Eventually, I crawled to my phone. It was under the sofa. I called Valentina. Not my mother. I didn't want that voice of duty. I wanted the voice of someone who had once listened without judging. Valentina arrived running. She opened the door with the key I'd given her weeks ago, not knowing it would become my only safety net. She found me on the floor, crying, trembling. "It's okay. I'm here now. It's okay, it's okay." She took me to the hospital. Not the public ER. She used her card to pay for a private doctor. She looked me in the eyes and said, "You'll tell me later how you'll pay me back, okay?" This time, the doctor knew what to do. They admitted me, diagnosed me with a multi-system flare-up. Lupus was attacking my kidneys, skin, and respiratory system. They hooked me to N4, gave me oxygen, and a nurse helped me change clothes. I'll never forget how she looked at me, like someone seeing a young, broken woman, not with pity, but with anger at the world. I was hospitalized for almost 10 days. No visitors. Valentina came sometimes, but she couldn't stay. My mother called me on the 3rd day. Her voice sounded guilty, but distant. She promised she would come back as soon as she could. She didn't. I shared the room with an older woman who had cancer. Every night we spoke softly. Her name was Elda. She was sweet, even though her cough sounded like it broke her soul. She told me about her grandchildren, about what she would cook if she could go back home. One night, she said to me, "You shouldn't be here. You're too young. This place is for us, the ones who've already lived." I told her that sometimes living longer doesn't mean living better. She looked at me, held my hand, and said, "Then you'll live twice as much after this. Because this isn't the end." I was discharged on the 11th day. I left in a wheelchair, my lungs still fragile, my skin raw, and a list of medications that looked like a pharmacy inventory. Valentina took me to her apartment. "You're staying with me until you recover," she said, leaving no room for argument. And so it was. The days at her place were a mix of tenderness and pain. She cooked, cleaned, helped me bathe. I cried. I felt like a burden. I hated myself for not being able to care for myself. But she never said it. Not once. She read me fragments of books aloud. She played music for me. She showed me videos of her sister. "Look, she's better today," she would say with a smile. I nodded, though inside I felt guilty. Because my illness had taken center stage again. When I regained some mobility, I insisted on going back home. It was dusty, empty, silent. But it was mine. I needed that, my space. Even if it hurt. I started little by little, walking again, writing. The support group kept growing. Now there were 15. Then 20. People arriving with the same desperate look I once had. I told them my story. I told them it hurt, yes, but staying silent hurt more. One day, I got an unexpected call. It was from the hospital, a doctor who had been involved in my case. She told me a foundation was looking for people with autoimmune diseases to participate in an awareness campaign, that they had read my posts on the group's blog, that they wanted to invite me to speak. I was terrified. So much. I thought about my swollen face, my weak voice. But I said yes. On the day of the event, I wore my best blouse, put on as much makeup as I could. I stepped onto the stage with trembling legs. I spoke. My voice was shaky, but my heart was whole. I told the truth, that they had called me dramatic, exaggerated, hysterical, that lupus had stolen a part of me, but forced me to meet a new version of myself. The crowd applauded. Some cried. A girl approached me at the end. She was 15. She hugged me and said, "Thank you." I thought I was the only one who felt this way. That night, when I got home, I received a text message. It was from my mother. It read, "I saw you in the video. I didn't know everything. I admire you. I'm coming back. Can we talk?" I didn't reply immediately. I stared at that message for a long time. Because at that moment, I didn't know if I wanted to reconcile or just rest. Because just when it seemed like everything was starting to settle, something happened that changed everything. My mother's message went unanswered for several days. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because every word I could write sounded fake, insufficient, or filled with a resentment I didn't want to feed. Finally, I just wrote, "I'm home. If you want to come, come." It wasn't an invitation. It was a declaration of neutrality. I didn't want peace or war. Just presence. She arrived on a Thursday afternoon, with an old backpack, shorter hair, and that look of someone who knows they've failed but doesn't have the tools to apologize. She said nothing when she came in. She looked at me. She hugged me. It was a slow, tight hug. She cried. She cried into my neck like I hadn't seen her do since my grandmother died. "I'm sorry," she barely whispered. And even though it didn't fix years of emotional distance, it was enough to crack open a space where light could enter. The following days were strange. She made coffee in the mornings. She asked about my medications. She cooked in silence. We didn't talk about the past or the hospitals or the pain. But she was there. And being there at this point was already an act of love. Meanwhile, the support group kept growing. We organized monthly meetings, collaborated with psychologists, secured medication donations. For the first time in a long while, I felt like my life served a purpose beyond mere survival. Until one morning, while writing a newsletter, I felt a sharp sting in my chest. I thought it was anxiety. I took a deep breath. But the pressure increased. The pain spread to my arm. I stood up and collapsed to my knees. I screamed. My mother ran in. She found me on the floor, sweating, trembling, pale. They rushed me to the ER. Diagnosis: pericarditis. Inflammation of the sac surrounding the heart, caused by lupus. Again, another part of my body betraying me. I was hospitalized. Again. The fourth hospital in less than 2 years. My veins were so marked by needles that a nurse said, "It looks like you live here." I felt defeated. More than ever. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about how unfair it all was. About everything I'd done to stay on my feet. About how, even with all that, my body still managed to break me. Valentina visited me on the third day. She sat by my side. She brought me a notebook. Inside were handwritten notes from several people from the support group. Messages. Drawings. Letters. "This is for you. Because you started this. Because you made us feel less alone." I cried like I hadn't since I was diagnosed. Not from physical pain, but from a brutal mix of gratitude, sadness, and fear. Because for the first time, I had something to lose. Not just a life, but a community. A mission. A purpose. And then the news arrived. The foundation that had supported us wanted to propose me as the national spokesperson for a campaign to raise awareness for invisible illnesses. A huge project with media coverage, interviews, travel. Everything I once thought was unreachable. I accepted. Even though my body shook. Even though the doctor told me to rest. Even though my mother begged me to prioritize my health. "What if something happens to you during all this?" she asked through tears. "What if you can't handle it?" I looked at her. Not as a daughter, but as a woman. As someone who had fought alone against an invisible enemy for years. "If something happens to me, at least it'll be while doing something that makes me feel alive." The travels began. Small cities. Interviews on local radio stations. Talks at medical schools. Testimonials in front of rooms full of students who were finally seeing a patient as more than a clinical case. It exhausted me, yes. But it also rebuilt me. At one of those conferences in Tarragona, a doctor approached me after the event. She told me she had seen my story on social media, that she had treated patients like me and now realized how much harm she had done by not listening. "You changed me," she said honestly. "You made me a better professional." That night, I wrote in my journal, "I'm not cured, but I'm healing. From a different place. From the voice." But peace never lasts long in a life like mine. One morning, while having breakfast with Valentina at some random cafe, I got a call from the clinic. The last routine test showed something abnormal with my kidneys. The staff member tried to sound neutral, but her voice shook. "We need you to come as soon as possible." That phrase lingered in the air. Valentina looked at me. She didn't ask anything. She just took my hand, squeezed it. She knew the world was collapsing again. At the clinic, the doctor greeted me with that look I can now read perfectly. The flawless mix of compassion and professionalism. "There are signs of imminent kidney failure," she said. "We need to act quickly. We'll need a biopsy and probably more aggressive treatment." I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of her. I nodded, collected the papers, walked to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror. And I felt like that broken, dramatic, ignored version of myself all over again. Only now no one dared say it out loud. But I could feel it in everyone's eyes. That compassion that hurts more than rejection. Valentina waited for me outside. My mother called. I didn't tell her yet. I couldn't, because something in me broke that afternoon. A question I still haven't answered. What if I don't make it this time? That night, alone in bed, I wrote in my journal, "I'm scared. Not of the pain. Of disappearing without finishing what I started. Of my voice going silent too soon. Of the people who believe in me feeling alone again. Because this time, it's not just my story. It's the story of all of us who are called dramatic, exaggerated, crazy. Of those who died, undiagnosed. Of those still waiting in an emergency room for someone to listen. And as I wait for results, biopsies, new decisions, I can only do one thing. Keep speaking. Even if I shake. Even if it hurts. Even if I don't know if I'll be able to stand up tomorrow.